Mind-bending brain. 1954. A scientist created a tank to turn off reality. It's like, it's a little weird, right? He stayed in it for 48 hours with no light, no sound, no gravity. What he discovered? The CIA classified it as too dangerous for humanity. Now, I think that's probably a little hyperbole there, if we're being honest. Maybe not. But anyway, so the scientist was Dr. John C. Lilly. I'll just read the first two, and you guys can check this thread if you're interested, if you guys are on X. But I do recommend being on X because it is the place for news these days. But anyway, so that scientist was Dr. John C. Lilly. Has anybody heard of this guy? I've never heard of this guy. Maybe one of you guys brought it up in the past, but I never dug in. This is wild. We're going to get incredibly weird tonight. So back to the thread. He pioneered research into the mind's potential and believed we could tap into higher levels of consciousness. So he built a strange device to test his theories. And we've all heard this one before, the sensory deprivation tank. But he had no idea what was coming next. We'll leave that cliffhanger so you can go read this fine fellow's thread on a Twitter X. But you get the idea. There's is this working? Come on, camera. All right, let me try this real fast, see if we can fix this. One moment, please. Just going to make sure everything's working or not working here. Okay, but yeah, okay, so the sensory deprivation bit is one of those things that makes me go, all right, this has been talked about an awful lot, right? Joe Rogan talks about this stuff and sort of decoupling consciousness in some way. And, well, this is how it begins, okay? It begins with the idea that you can lay in this tank and sort of feel like you are in an out-of-body experience. But, of course, you are not. You are, in your body fully and completely. However, there's a larger... something happening here, because imagine this. So go back to, the beginning, whenever you first recognized you were a conscious being, whatever that looks like, right? We don't know. Nobody can really define that. If it happens, sort of womb side, or it happens birth side, or it happens, as the ancient Greeks might have said, weeks after the fact. Like, who knows? Who really knows what this type of thing is, right? Meaning consciousness, when it begins. All right. But here's the weird part. So imagine that. Back to what the very, very beginning of this was, and you're just chilling, okay? And then suddenly you think, and therefore you are, all right? Okay, yeah, exactly. I've never experienced a sensory deprivation tank either, and I'd also be interested. What's up, sweets? Okay, and so you think, therefore you are. I think, therefore I am, and now you are in, the welcome to life, right? Welcome to life as a conscious being. So the bizarre part about it is that the longer that this guy, so I did some reading up on this John C. Lilly guy, and the more you use this thing, the more it starts to really uncouple that consciousness aspect of maybe the out-of-body experience, or, right, we talk about lucid dreams and a lot of this weird stuff too. But the bizarre part about this is this guy is probably so far out there, John C. Lilly, and I mean that in the best way, because you know me, I'm a massive weirdo myself, so I would never, scorn other weirdos. But this guy is so far out there, he's probably too far out there for a Troubled Minds episode, okay? He's talked about some of the stuff, like these are theories of his, of the actual consciousness, the universe, the multiverse, all manner of things. And it started with that sensory deprivation tank, with him actually sort of using it as a way to feel what it would be like to be conscious, just the consciousness itself, without the body. Okay, without the body, what does it mean? Is it? Well, I know it opens up a lot of questions, doesn't it? I'll go straight to the write-up, because this is important to get this right and tell you what exactly is happening. All these links are in the description down below. I encourage you to read these things in full if you're interested in the ideas, because that's exactly the point of all this, right? Is these ideas. It's ideas, it's less people. But in this case, it is Dr. John C. Lilly, born 1915, passed in 2001. He was an American physician, neuroscientist, psychoanalyst, and philosopher renowned for his pioneering work in consciousness exploration and interspecies communication. You catch that? Interspecies communication. His innovative research into the human mind and a dolphin. Sorry about that. So innovative research into the human mind and dolphin intelligence has left a lasting impact on both scientific inquiry and popular culture. In the 1950s, Lilly developed the isolation tank, as we said, a device designed to minimize external sensory input, allowing individuals to delve deeply into their own consciousness. This invention provided a unique environment for studying the mind's capabilities and limitations, leading to profound insights into human cognition and perception. Lilly's work with isolation tanks also inspired the 1980 film Altered States, which I've never seen that. Has anybody ever seen that? I've never seen that movie, that movie explores themes of sensory deprivation and altered states of consciousness. Now, the bizarre part about this is, as I'm saying, it seems like there's nothing new under the sun, because this is just the beginning of this conversation, the sensory deprivation bit. Dr. John C. Lilly, he was not only doing this, the sensory deprivation stuff, he was also started experimenting with, of course, as you would expect, back in the 60s or whatever. He was a friend of Timothy Leary and Ram Dass and this whole group, right? And they were not just experiencing or studying consciousness in terms of sort of the elevation of something like meditation, but then this sensory deprivation became part of that. And then, of course, they added the old, extracurriculars on top, ketamine, LSD, some of the other stuff they were doing. And just a reminder, I don't do drugs. I don't encourage you to do drugs. You should stay away from drugs. They're bad for you, unless, of course, they are administered by a physician you trust. Okay, there you go. That's all the disclaimers. And I mean that. I really don't. And I don't talk about these things to really pimp that stuff. I think this is probably way important, and we can leave all that stuff out. It's just sort of another layer that they tried to add to this. But so the bizarre part is he's known mostly, this John C. Lilly guy is mostly known for communicating with dolphins or trying to communicate with dolphins. Now, think about how wild that is. So keep that, pin that, leave it there for just a moment. We're going to take a quick break and get a word from our sponsor. In this case, it is Human Inspiration. But that's the deal, right? So what is it like in terms of isolated consciousness? I'm calling this the collision of mind tonight. And what would it be like? Has anybody actually ever been in a sensory deprivation tank? And were you able to basically forget that your body existed and then sort of maybe meld with a larger consciousness? I don't know. That's the question tonight. And we're going to, like I said, this gets more weird than probably 3 or 4 Troubled Mind shows combined. I was shocked when I was reading this John C. Lilly stuff. So here's the bizarre part. I was reading on this John C. Lilly guy, and not just did he invent this, the isolation tank, okay, sensory deprivation, which we've talked about quite a lot, but also, so his fascination with dolphin intelligence led him to establish research centers. Okay, wait, so let's rewind here. Yep, we're good. Okay, yeah. So his fascination with dolphin intelligence, which is that interspecies communication, led him to establish research centers in the U.S., Virgin Islands, and San Francisco, where he investigated the vocalizations and cognitive abilities of bottlenose dolphins. He believed that understanding dolphin communication could offer insights into non-human intelligence and the potential for interspecies dialogue. And I think arguably this is probably the thing he's most famous for. As I was cruising around the interwebs, John C. Lilly came up time and again as the pioneer, and being able to at least start to understand the vocalizations of dolphins, body language, that type of thing, and try and decipher it and decode it so that we were actually able to maybe bridge the gap between species and actually communicate, which would be wild, and also has an interesting parallel to the modern time, which would be the AI stuff, right? And being able to feed, let's say, dolphin vocalizations into an AI system and then get actual something coherent back that makes sense to humans, right? But he was talking about this way back in, the 1950s? Yeah. So 1950s, he developed the isolation tank, and then he started doing this dolphin stuff and wrote this book, The Day of the Dolphin, in 1973. All right. So it starts, pretty innocuous. Like, this is cool. This is cool research. And this is one of those things where I was interested immediately. I was like, oh, wow, this seems pretty cool, this guy. And the more I went down the rabbit hole, the more I was blown away. Like, a lot of the things that really have seeped into pop culture, comics recently, movies, this intertwines with the Philip K. Dick cosmology a little bit. It seems like this guy was really like huge, like big brained, and was trying to literally figure out what the true nature of reality is, which, as we've talked about in the past, it could be incredibly complicated if you're, open-minded enough to consider a bunch of ideas. But anyway, so John C. Lilly is the guy. And so not only did he invent the isolation tank, it sort of brought about the idea in 50s, 60s, 70s, which again is MK Ultraville, really in that space, right? And I do wonder how much of that was built into this. If anybody knows anything about it, I'd love to hear it. But where they were really doing all that work on consciousness and trying to figure out what the hell was happening with human, not just cognition, but the larger conscious self. And again, back to the philosophical beginning of what makes me, me, and what makes you, you. Okay, how come we are different? We're both conscious. However, there's these reality tunnels. Okay, that's a different show for a different time. We just did that one recently. But where we see things differently, we mature differently, we change differently, and we're all sort of on our own time frames. And even we're introduced to a larger consciousness in different times. And that was really his idea there that, well, let's get to it. Let's just get to the weird stuff. I'll finish reading this. It's better to read it directly so I don't botch it. But anyway, so his efforts in the field of the dolphin interspecies dialogue, so hang tight on the dolphin stuff. We'll get to the weird stuff. So his efforts in this field inspired the 1973 film, The Day of the Dolphin, which explores themes of human-dolphin communication. Perfect. In the 1960s, Lilly began experimenting with psychedelics. As I said, all the disclaimers apply. Don't do drugs, kids. I mean that. I don't do them myself, so I don't encourage you to as well. Of course, including LSD, often in conjunction with these isolation tank sessions. He aimed to explore the depths of human consciousness and the mind's potential for self-programming. His experiences and theories are detailed in his autobiographical work, The Center of the Cyclone. And that sounds pretty fire, right? The center of the cyclone. As I say, I'm blessed to be in the middle of this whirlwind of all you guys and your great ideas. But that sounds pretty similar, right? Where he discusses in this book his journey into inner space and the exploration of altered states of consciousness. All right. Fine, right? This is fine. Exactly. Entertainment purposes only. 100%. Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing that made me go, wait a freaking minute with this guy. Are you kidding me? So he actually had these out-of-body experiences that were induced by not just psychedelics, put that aside for the moment because it's less important here, but in the sensory deprivation tanks, he was merging his consciousness with that of a larger consciousness entirely, okay? And, and it got weird because he started to get these theories, all right? Because, of course, when you have these out-of-body experiences, or let's say even dream states, if you're a lucid dreamer, we talk about this, a dream journal sort of thing. He was doing this, these out-of-body, in-body, out-of-body with the sensory deprivation tanks, but he started to communicate with entities. We've heard this before, right? Does this sound like something you've heard before? So here's a couple things, right? Regarding this stuff he believed, because I'll give you the brief outline because this is nutter butters. And then we'll get into the deep dive of what his theories are, because specifically he started with the dolphin communication stuff. Like I said, this consciousness research, brain research, his notable publications, we covered a lot, but this is wild. He's got something called the ECCO theory, and this echoes the time variance authority, right, from Loki, or the Adjustment Bureau from Philip K. Dick. So listen to this. See, the consciousness research in Lilly's work gets incredibly wild, particularly from the mid-60s onward. Here's where things get interesting. The ECCO theory. Lilly developed a belief in what he called the Earth Coincidence Control Office. Yeah, I'll say that again. The ECCO. So from here forward, when we say ECCO, it means the Earth Coincidence Control Office. All right. And just as a nice quote that I found that fits into this very well. Speaking of that, Carl Jung said this, as we'll drop this in. I simply believe that some part of the human self or soul is not subject to the laws of space and time. One Carl Gustav Jung, okay, which takes us back to the ECCO theory. So he claimed this was a cosmic bureaucracy that orchestrated meaningful coincidences. The old synchronicity, right? And he believed ECCO was run by higher evolutionary entities that guided human development. And where did he get this from? Yeah, he got this from the Psychonaut stuff, from actually spending time in these sensory deprivation tanks and meeting entities, actual entities. Okay, and like I said, we've heard this stuff before, right? So I do wonder when this shamanic stuff began in the modern space. And is it tied into that MK Ultra? We've talked about that quite a lot as well. The MK Ultra for the masses, trauma, generational trauma, and how they use it against us. If it bleeds, it leads for particular reasons, because, right, if we're always in a state of fear, then we can't really recognize ourselves and what we need to be doing. It's an age-old tactic back to Bernays propaganda, like we've always talked about in the past as well. However, the bizarre part of this is that not only is he talking about the ECCO as this Earth Coincidence Control Office, which manages synchronicities, he was suggesting that managing these synchronicities was part of the, let's say, that shamanic journey, and as you were ready for them, they would be introduced to you by this ECCO. Okay? Weird, right? It gets even more strange, though, because that was wild enough. I was like, damn, this is way out there. Holy crap, this guy's good. I'm really liking this guy. And we're talking about John C. Lilly. His second idea, which was basically back to Philip K. Dick a little bit, the duality of creation, was this. A solid state intelligence, SSI, he called it. So this theory was about a malevolent artificial intelligence that he called SSI. Okay, does this sound familiar? Stop me if you've heard this one. He believed this intelligence existed in solid-state electronic devices. Wow, this guy seemed to be like 100 years ahead of his time. He claimed it was trying to take over Earth by promoting the proliferation of computers, though it was he thought it was in conflict with the ECCO for control of the Earth. All right, that's exactly the point. Okay, so he's got these two things: the solid state intelligence, the ECCO, which is the Earth Coincidence Control Office, and it's basically the age-old trope of humanity, right, and not humanity, some non-human thing happening here. And in this case, he believed these two things were actually vying for Earth, for control of the Earth. Which, of course, how would you do that? It would be through the control of the human mind. And that right there is the thing that made me go, wait a minute, we've heard this one before. We've talked about this quite a lot in different ways. And so I do wonder if much of the mainstream media is from this guy, much of like the comic books, much of, Philip K. Dick. And I'm not sure if Philip K. Dick was in this circle, but, John Lilly hung out with, like I said, a lot of the psychonauts. They got the Allen Ginsberg Project here talking about him. What is this? Okay, so he was, but let me read this real fast. And this will probably fill in a bunch of the blanks, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on non-local consciousness and these weird programs he thinks exist. And it sounds fantastic to me. But John Cunningham Lilly died 20 years ago on this day. This is back on whenever this published, 20 years after he passed. He was an American physician, neuroscientist, psychoanalyst, psychonaut, philosopher, writer, and inventor. You had me a philosopher. I didn't need all the rest of that. And a member of a generation of counterculture scientists and thinkers that included Ram Dass, Werner Erhard, and Timothy Leary, all frequent visitors to the Lilly home. And that probably fills in a little bit of the blanks there, right? So his best known book and his mainstream work was Ascent of the Cyclone, as we said, 1972. And he is probably most famous for that dolphin stuff. Okay, so we'll get back to the dolphin stuff, how it fits into this. But the question for tonight, of course, layered questions and nonlinear open-ended, we can take this wherever we like, is exactly the point. Is there such a thing as a non-local consciousness? Are you able to tap into it by sort of melding into a sensory deprivation space or meditation in some capacity? And would you be able to find, animal consciousness kind of swimming in that same space? Because it seemed like this guy, so at some point they say this guy lived with a dolphin. He actually had like a flooded house with a dolphin, like, Flipper. Was it the original Flipper? Like, I don't know. Anybody old enough to even know what that show is? But you get my meaning here. So he was trying to work on not just the consciousness itself, but how the collision of the mind didn't have to be just human. It could be the animal kingdom as well. So if you guys have heard of John C. Lilly, and of course we'll take this anywhere you want to take it, but he seems to be a fascinating fellow. Again, passed away in 2001, and wild things that we just started. And I'm just getting started. So if you're like, damn, that's a lot already. Yeah, it's a lot already. And it gets even more wild. What do you think about this? Do you think there is some non-local consciousness? And what does it look like when you start to merge this with the animal kingdom and start to talk to dolphins themselves? Don't forget that malevolent AI. And of course, the ECCO, the Earth Coincidence Control Office. See how we just went full troubled minds in about 15 minutes? Yeah, this is incredibly wild. What do you know about it?